In FPL Differential XI, I pick a team of 11 lowly owned players who I predict to score the most points for the upcoming game week to assist you in gaining rank over other fantasy managers. There's just 3 rules. The squad must be worth a maximum of 82.5 million. Each player must be selected by less than 10% of managers, and I'm only allowed to pick up to 3 players from a single team. A silhouette of each player I've selected is already on the pitch, so play along by seeing how many of the 11 you can correctly guess. First up in goal, it's Sam Johnston for Wolves' home game versus Leeds. Having underwhelmed at the start of the season and sitting rock bottom of the table, Wolves need to find a way of turning things around, and I expect this is the week that they'll do it. I predict a low-scoring encounter with Leeds this week, who themselves have only scored a single goal in the first 4 game weeks. Johnston got the nod in goal over Sarr against Newcastle, and he made a few good saves in that game, so I fully expect him to keep his place for the time being. I'm going straight into a double up with the Wolves defence this week with Emmanuel Agbadou. I'm finding Game Week 5 to be a tough week to predict the outcome of a lot of the matches, but I do think that Wolves will carve out a 1 or 2-0 win over Leeds. Agbadou looks certain to start across the back line, and he's already picked up DEFCON points in 50% of games this season, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him score an 8-pointer plus additional bonus points if Wolves are to keep a clean sheet. Burnley were incredibly unlucky not to pick up a point in that hard-fought 1-0 defeat to Liverpool last week. However, if they play in a similar fashion this time out against Nottingham Forest, I think the away side might stand a good chance of keeping a clean sheet. It wasn't an ideal debut match for Ange Postecoglou last week against the Gunners. However, I think Forest will be able to control possession a lot more heavily against Burnley, and thus dictate the rhythm that this game is played at. Milenkovic is just a solid all-round choice. He's guaranteed to start, got good set-piece threat, and has an outside chance of hitting the DEFCON points. Speaking of defensive contributions, one player who's managed to hit the threshold 3 weeks in a row is Nathan Collins, who's the final defender to join the Differential 11 for Game Week 5. Brentford travelled to Fulham this weekend, and it was a genuine coin toss of whether to pick Collins or back the home side instead and go with Anderson. Similarly to the Wolves-Leeds fixture, I expect this one to be a tight, low-scoring matchup, and I just fancy Brentford to marginally edge out a result. Even if Collins does concede, I think he'll pick up DEFCON points and score a 4-pointer at the very minimum. Before revealing the next player, if you fancy winning yourself a channel shoutout and a place on the Differential 11 leaderboard, correctly guess the points total of this week's Differential 11 team, or guess the player who individually scores the most points in this upcoming game week of FPL. Details of how to submit your predictions will be down below in the pinned comment. Despite what I just said, I have backed an Anderson to do well this week, but it's Elliot Anderson, not Joachim. Having racked up 11 DEFCON points 3 weeks in a row, owners were relieved to see Anderson finally hit the threshold in Game Week 4 against Arsenal. Even though they failed to impress against the Gunners, I still favour Forest to come out with the 3 points against Burnley, and Anderson is one of those players who has multiple routes to points. There's assist potential from open play and set pieces, DEFCON points, and also the off chance of a goal. Xavi Simons made his Tottenham debut against West Ham. He played 70 minutes, picked up an assist, and on the whole, had a very good game. Spurs have started the 25-26 season well, with 9 points from a possible 12. However, the issue for us FPL managers is deciding on an attacking asset that's guaranteed to start, as there were surprise benchings for Brennan Johnson and Richarlison last week. With Maddison and Kulusevski long-term absentees though, I'd expect Xavi to remain in the first 11 as a creative outlet, whether that's centrally or from the left-hand side. If you're looking for a super differential to jump up the ranks this week, then don't look much further than Hwang Hee-chan, who's just 0.2% selected within the game. With Strand Larsen currently out injured, Hee-chan is going to have another shot at leading the line against Leeds. And with a poor start to their season, you feel as though Wolves are going to have to go for this one from an attacking sense. Hee-chan is listed out of position as a midfielder in FPL, meaning that he'll score extra points for goals, clean sheets, and DEFCON, and he also has the added bonus of being on penalties. The Brighton v Tottenham match is definitely a tough one to call, but if there's one thing I'm expecting from this game, it's that there'll be no shortage of goals. Mitoma managed to open his goal-scoring account for the season against Bournemouth with a clever header at the far post to convert Minte's cross. Similarly to Spurs, Brighton have got a number of options to pick from in attack, but I think that the wingers are the safest bets to go for, especially when looking for guaranteed minutes, creativity and offensive threat. Arsenal and City both picked up solid 3-0 wins at home last week, and it's undoubtedly very difficult to predict which way this one will go. Madueke was arguably the man of the match for Arsenal against Forest, continuously opening up the defence and creating chances. Even though City kept a clean sheet against United, they offered up a ton of chances, particularly down their left-hand side, and I can foresee the Arsenal winger having a lot of joy getting in behind their high defensive line. This one feels like a little bit of a punt, but I think there's a high upside if it comes off. Nick Voltemade marked his Newcastle debut with a goal against Wolves, scoring a 9-pointer in FPL with all 3 bonus. This week, the Magpies travel to high-flying Bournemouth, who have really flourished at the start of the 25-26 Premier League campaign with 3 wins from 4. Despite impressing in attack, defensively, they have given up a number of chances. And let's not forget that they lost a number of their backline during the summer transfer window, which has definitely weakened them in that department. With Wissa out injured and Gordon still suspended, I'd fully expect Voltemade to start up front again in this one. After a long spell out injured last season, Igor Thiago has returned to the Brentford starting lineup, and he's looked pretty sharp in the opening month of the Premier League, scoring twice in his opening 4 fixtures. Although I don't expect Brentford to be anywhere near as prolific in creating goal-scoring chances as they were last year, they're still putting up a fair share of high XG chances, and if this continues, it's likely to translate into goal-scoring opportunities for Thiago, who of course also has the added bonus of being on penalties. Just a quick reminder to let you know that your channel could feature here on the Differential 11 series. The score of last week's Differential 11 was 42 points for Gameweek 4, which nobody guessed correctly. Nobody was also able to correctly predict the highest scoring player of the game week, which was Zubamendi from Arsenal, who scored a gigantic 16 points. And that means that no one has scored points to make it onto the Differential 11 channel leaderboard. If you are interested in winning a shout out in next week's video, remember to comment below the number of points that you predict today's Differential 11 team to score and the highest scoring player of the game week. And as always, thank you so much for watching and best of luck in hitting those big green arrows.